Welcome to Airborne Flight Training. Coming up on this week's episode, ALPA disparages proposed legislation. New regional aircraft outlook published. Indian carrier announces 40% pay bump and better working conditions. And I'm your host, Holland Lee. Welcome to Airborne Flight Training, a weekly program dedicated to future aviators and aviation professionals. Airborne Flight Training is brought to you in part by King Schools. King Schools has been leading the effort in producing expert aviation training programs and computer-based learning software for nearly 50 years. Find out why pilots love King teaching at kingschools.com. Now let's get into today's stories. ALPA disparages proposed legislation. ALPA has been sounding off over current legislative issues. ALPA President Captain Jason Ambrosi set forth in a June 29th statement, quote, "We cannot lose sight of the fact that Congress is poised to pass legislation that contains multiple anti-safety provisions that would introduce even more risk into the U.S. aviation system. Recent flight delays and cancellations are a reminder that the industry is still recovering from the pandemic, and we must remain vigilant in maintaining safety. Flying is the safest mode of transportation in the world, thanks largely to the highly trained, skilled, and experienced pilots who are at the controls of every airline flight, as well as landmark safety legislation enacted more than a decade ago that raised the bar on airline pilot safety training. Despite a 99.8% reduction in fatalities, some special interests are trying to change the law to lower the bar on pilot training, which would introduce even more risk and potential disruptions. Now is not the time to lower safety standards or arbitrarily change the retirement age for highly skilled aviators. We are calling on all Americans who rely on safe and efficient air travel to join our call to action. Reach out to your elected officials and tell them to oppose the anti-safety, anti-worker provisions that are being considered in the pending FAA reauthorization," end quote. And coming up after the break, UK initiative seeks to broaden student interest in aviation.
Throughout the globe, Piper Aircraft has hand-selected the very best in company representation, service, and support. From first inquiry to acquisition to product support, Piper Aircraft ownership is seamless and worry-free. Piper Aircraft authorized dealers, factory trained, factory connected.
Well, hello, fellow pilot. I'm John King.
And I'm Martha King.
You know, we've all had our flying lives disrupted lately.
Well, King Schools is here to help you stay up to date with courses that you can access on your desktop, iPad, or iPhone. If you'd like a refresher or just want to expand your aviation horizons, we have a course for you.
So head over to kingschools.com/rusty today for details.
Welcome back. Now let's take a trip around the patch for some shorter stories. UK initiative seeks to broaden student interest in aviation. Following their respective completions of a 7-month program, upwards of 40 pupils hailing from state schools across Hertfordshire and North London took triumphantly to the skies at Watford, Hertfordshire, England's London Elstree Aerodrome. Organized by the Air League, the UK's leading aviation and aerospace charity, 42 students participated in a series of air experience days at the London Elstree Aerodrome, taking part in team building and communication workshops prior to experiencing half-day flying lessons in powered aircraft. FAA seeking AirVenture-Bound pilots for paid research study. The FAA is recruiting pilots attending EAA AirVenture Oshkosh 2023 to participate in a paid research study. To complete the study in question, the FAA needs adult pilots aged 18 years or older who have flown at least once in the last 6 months, to include Part 142 simulator training time, and who hold current Class 1, 2, or 3 not basic medical certification. The test session spans approximately 4 hours and pays $300, $400, or $500 dependent on medical certification class. Payment is disbursed immediately following participation. AEA announces 2023-24 scholarship winners. The Aircraft Electronics Association's Educational Foundation has announced the names of the individuals awarded scholarships for the 2023 through 24 academic year. The AEA Educational Foundation annually awards scholarships to students pursuing careers in avionics or aircraft maintenance, as well as students from AEA member companies. The foundation was created in 1990 to enhance, promote, and secure the future of aviation maintenance by furthering the education of students, technicians, members of the AEA, and others as determined by aviation industry needs. FAA updates non-towered airport advisory circular. The FAA has published an update to Advisory Circular 9066, which pertains to aircraft operations at non-towered airports. The revision calls attention to regulatory requirements, recommended operations, and communication procedures germane to aircraft operations at airports without FAA VFR control towers, or at towered airports during those hours at which the tower is unattended. The AC, which has been updated to reflect current procedures and best practices at airports without an operating control tower, recommends traffic patterns, communication phraseology, and operational procedures. Well, that's it for today's trip around the patch. Let's get back to the rest of the news. New Regional Aircraft Outlook published. What might you be flying as you enter the job market? A fresh market outlook came courtesy of Embraer, showing $650 billion up for grabs and a need for 11,000 new regional aircraft. As global passenger volume rose to 3.2% annual growth, the industry watched its fortunes rise in turn, seeing widespread demand for narrow-body and short-haul aircraft. A long list of growing markets throughout the East have also served to boost interest in smaller aircraft suited to shorter, rougher fields too. Some of Embraer's biggest news has come from a burgeoning business overhauling first-gen passenger layout E-jets to freighter spec, giving Chinese operators a cheap, effective cargo hauler. Demand for the region stands out amongst its peers in growing markets, with 4.4% annual growth expected. Overall, Asia should see 3,180 new sub-150-seat jet deliveries through 2042. The next highest growth market lies in Latin America, where expanding infrastructure and markets will see 960 deliveries and a 4.1% growth rate. Jets will remain the favorite. Only 2,210 turboprop deliveries are expected through 2042, with 8,790 jets slated for delivery around the world. Of those, Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East will account for 20.3% of turboprop deliveries. Coming up after these messages, Indian carrier announces 40% pay bump and better working conditions.
There's a difference between charting a steady course and pushing for the ceiling. And for nearly a century, Hartzell Propeller has been defining that difference. It's in our passion for engineering and research and our dedication to testing the limits of performance. We are built on honor. We are Hartzell Propeller.
If it looks good, it usually flies good. The Bristol series of aircraft is proof of that. Furthering their legacy of safety and efficiency, Bristol is proud to feature the Rotax 915IS Turbo in the current lineup of aircraft. The 915IS Turbo power plant offers more power than ever before in a light sport aircraft. Learn more about Bristol at www.sportflyingusa.com.
Welcome back. Indian carrier announces 40% pay bump and better working conditions. India's Akasa Air announced a pay increase with a handful of QOL improvements following the recent trend of enhanced compensation as carriers all over the globe struggle to keep pilots on the roster. The carrier caught attention with a decision to increase pilot compensation by 40%, with slight drops in base pay hours from 45 to 40 hours. Additionally, allowances for deadhead and layovers were increased. For those looking to climb their way up the ladder as quickly as possible, a criteria change for a senior captain grade was changed from 1,000 hours in type to 4 years as pilot in command. For the younger pilots, the minimum flight hours condition was removed from training agreements entirely. Akasa Air is a relative newcomer in the Indian market, riding a surge of expanding travel demand in the region, boasting the, quote, youngest fleet in global aviation. The line began service in August 2022, starting out with a fleet of 18 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. Since then, the operation has continued to grow, reaching the point where pilot retention became a running issue. Much like the U.S. market, pilots are in demand, and the fix is a simple if dear one: better pay and living conditions, but having some cool aircraft also helps. And that's our show for today. You can catch episodes of Airborne on YouTube, Roku, or Fire TV. Just search for Aero-News or Airborne, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching.